Right now, authorities are searching for a Wisconsin woman out on a nearly $500,000 bond, as she's accused of bail jumping ahead of her high-profile murder trial. Chrystul Kizer's case made national headlines, sparking conversation on how sexual abuse victims are treated in our justice system.
It's an incredibly fascinating case because it raises issues that were probably never seen before, particularly in Wisconsin.
At 17 years old, Kizer was arrested and charged, accused of killing 34-year-old Randall Voller III, her alleged abuser who she claims sex trafficked her. She spent nearly 2 years behind bars before activist groups raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for her release. But as one of the conditions of her bond, she was instructed not to commit any crimes. And now authorities are looking for her for allegedly doing just that. As Kizer awaits trial for the 2018 shooting, she's now accused of attacking a man she lived with in early January.
Bail jumping is serious, but it's certainly less serious than the ultimate charge of murder.
I spoke with Law&Crime legal analyst Julie Rendelman, who explained why bail jumping is a huge issue in Kizer's upcoming homicide trial.
The big issue, I think, about bail jumping is whether or not she's going to be incarcerated during the course of the trial, because bail jumping indicates that someone's not going to come back to court. I think the interesting thing about the second case, in terms of her rearrest, is that we see, without minimizing potentially what she has done to her alleged victims, we see in a way her being victimized again and again.
Here's what else we know about the case that initially put Chrystul Kizer behind bars. Wisconsin prosecutors say she shot and killed Randall Voller III in June of 2018. According to court documents, Kizer admitted to taking an Uber from Milwaukee to Kenosha and shooting Voller because she was upset and tired of him abusing her. Prosecutors did admit Voller was preying on Kizer, other underage girls, and was under investigation for sexual abuse and producing child pornography. After Kizer allegedly shot Voller in the head twice, she then set his house on fire before fleeing in his BMW. Voller's BMW was found abandoned in Milwaukee. Police reportedly used a receipt found in the car, surveillance video, and Facebook to track the stolen car to Kizer. She initially denied knowing Voller or even traveling to Kenosha, but then came clean, admitting she knew him after the two met on Backpage when she was 16 years old. Kizer was charged with first-degree intentional homicide as well as theft and arson.
Every state is different. I think New York has really changed their viewpoint on truly the victims of whether it be prostitution or sex trafficking. And so the individuals who are brought into prostitution are no longer arrested. And the viewpoint is to try to get them out of that world, and, figure out a better path for them. And so certainly in New York, they've jumped on in the right direction in terms of the handling of that. I'm not so sure that other states have followed suit. In Kizer's case, she's not claiming a pure self-defense. The argument is really that the actions in terms of the death of the victim in that case are so closely tied up with the sex trafficking that you can't really separate it out. And that's more of what the affirmative defense is going to be versus an actual self-defense claim where she's saying he arguably is coming at her, and she needs to shoot him in order to protect herself.
Kizer's bail was initially set at $1 million. Prosecutors initially argued the killing was premeditated. Although the state agreed Voller was an abuser, prosecutors said Kizer planned to steal Voller's car and she downloaded a police scanner app the day of the shooting. Meanwhile, Kizer said she killed Voller in self-defense after he had pinned her down and attempted to rape her. Kizer's case began making headlines a year after the crime, with activists such as Tarana Burke, Alyssa Milano, and Cyntoia Brown Long, whose case similarly mirrored Kizer's, came for support. And Cyntoia's case, she was convicted of murder and robbery at 16 years old for the 2004 murder of Johnny Michael Allen, who allegedly picked up Cyntoia for sex. Cyntoia shot Brown in the back of the head before running off with money from his wallet and fleeing the scene in his truck. She was originally sentenced to life in prison. However, in 2013, with renewed interest in her case, her original sentence was commuted to 15 years in prison, and she was released in 2019. Like Kizer, Cyntoia Brown was a child victim of sex trafficking, sparking conversation on sexual abuse victims acting in self-defense.
Unfortunately, I think anytime we're dealing with a case involving homicide, a case involving where the victim is white, the alleged defendant is black, race is going to potentially play an issue. One of the first things that happened that raised a lot of eyebrows is how long she remained incarcerated, when it was clear there was no question that while she did commit the actual acts in terms of the crime, that there was clear mitigation for why she had done what she had done. And it took actually the community to get her out on, I believe, $400,000 bail at the time. And so I think it's incredibly naive for anyone to think that race does not play a role. With that said, there are clear issues here that had to be decided by an appellate court. Because simply because you are the victim of a crime, whether it be domestic violence, sex trafficking, robbery, rape, that doesn't automatically give you carte blanche to commit a murder. And so I think it's incredibly important for there to be a clear definition and understanding. So when they go into trial, a jury's really going to understand what the law is and what the law isn't.
In February 2020, a Kenosha County Circuit Court judge lowered Kizer's bail from $1 million to $400,000. Months later in June, Kizer posted bond with money raised by several support groups. Fast forward to January 2024, 5 months ahead of her trial, prosecutors have filed an arrest warrant for not complying with the terms of her bond. According to local reports, on January 7th, Milwaukee police say Kizer called 911 claiming a man had put his hands on her and tried to rape her in a local apartment. Kizer reportedly called the man a child molester as he could be heard yelling, "Stop hitting me." The man was identified as her live-in boyfriend, David Melton, a non-compliant registered sex offender. Police say when they arrived, Kizer used profane and abusive language toward Melton after learning he was a convicted child sex offender and lied to her about why he was on supervision. Officers say Kizer lunged at Melton, striking him repeatedly in the face and resisting officers who were trying to make the man leave. Police arrested the now 23-year-old Kizer but released her the following day after prosecutors chose not to charge her at first. Then the DA's office chose to file charges for disorderly conduct, leading Kenosha County prosecutors to tack on 4 felony bail jumping charges and 1 count of failing to update her address, which would put her back behind bars.
She's in a second quote unquote relationship with a registered sex offender. And so it seems like almost a cycle of victimization, to be frank. And so, it's interesting because keep in mind also that the police initially did not keep her on that second case. It wasn't until more contemplation by the prosecution's office that they decided that to file charges against her. And so that's what led to the bail jumping that we're talking about now.
Kenosha prosecutors have asked the judge to increase her bail back to $1 million in the homicide case.
And again, I go back to what we talked about before, which is simply because you're the victim of a crime, even an incredibly horrific crime, doesn't give you the right to take the law into your own hands, with exception. With that said, the issue is really when it comes to bail, whether or not an individual is going to return to court, period. And so if she's found quickly, if she turns herself in, I think it's less likely than a judge would impose that much bail because turning yourself in indicates that you're willing to attend trial and be present. Also, keep in mind the trial is upcoming. And so the hope from the defense's perspective is that she'll be successful at this trial and be vindicated. So, at this point, who knows?
Each bail jumping charge reportedly carries a possible sentence of 3 years in prison. Chrystul Kizer's homicide trial is slated to begin in June. If convicted, she faces up to life in prison. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.